Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for your patience today. This session is the Ask the Expert session, where we'll be talking about redefining workforce engagement with contact center AI. My name is Asrar, and I will be the host for this specific session. I'm myself a senior business development and sales manager for Microsoft for Startups team. What that really means is I get to work with growth stage companies that are very strategic partners of our Microsoft for Startups program. For those of you who may not know, Microsoft for Startups is an exclusive program dedicated to helping enterprise-ready B2B startups rapidly scale their companies. Joining me today is Pete Lee, who is the VP of Sales and Alliances at Observe. Pete, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thanks, Ashwar. Very proud to be a partner with you on this journey. So Observe.ai, we are a contact center AI platform that is powered by the Microsoft stack. So really excited to share how we're bringing this change to the marketplace, especially during COVID.
Thank you, Pete. At this time, I also want to remind everyone of our Microsoft Code of Conduct. Microsoft's mission is to empower every person and organization on the planet to achieve more. And we want to seek to create a respectful, friendly, and fun and exclusive experience for all of our participants. So with that, let's just dive right into it. Pete, tell us a little bit about Observe.com and a brief overview of the company and what problem does Observe.ai solution currently solve?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny that this seems like a pretty simple challenge, but Ashwar, the last time you called into customer support of any company that you're dealing with, whether it's ordering food or going to the groceries, chances are you have a pretty bad experience. And the truth is, I think we're tackling that customer experience challenge from the wrong lens. Really what we're trying to do is we're using contact center AI to empower the contact center agents, really the frontline folks who are your enablers, who are your brand representative. Because ultimately, if you can enable your agents to be more effective, they ultimately can have a better experience for their end customers, whether it's helping them get their groceries, whether it's helping them secure a mortgage. So basically with AI, we're able to automate the experience and then turn all of that insights into proper coaching and training, therefore driving the best CX.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Pete. Now, when it comes to contact center AI, I mean, during COVID, we saw a surge in folks reaching out to support and contact centers for help, etc. Can you talk a little bit about the role of contact center AI in the new world of work? It would be highly beneficial for the audience to shed some light on the evolution, especially pre-COVID, during COVID, as we are right now, and sort of what you expect post-COVID as well in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. There's already been a growing trend. It's been a consumer economy where consumers expect more from their brands, right? And so the customer experience has been at the forefront of multiple people. However, COVID expedited everything. So with COVID, business conditions change. So for example, Ashwar, you're working from home now. Your demands on the products that you buy are completely different, right? All of a sudden, they're trying to pivot around you. And on the other side, contact centers all over the world are trying to figure out, as agents are working from home, how they maintain the same level of quality, the same level of performance, and the same level of compliance. As you know, a lot of fraud may be happening if you're not able to be locked in with the security measures. So with contact center AI, we're able to analyze 100% of the conversations that is happening. And therefore, we're able to redact sensitive information. We're able to drive agents to perform better by spotting trends happening in the calls. And lastly, we're able to then coach and train the agents just like they are in a brick and mortar environment, even if they are dispersed working from home.
Absolutely. So as we talk about security and compliance, I mean, at the end of the day, that's the backbone of everything, right? And now as agents connect with customers, be it via voice modality, chat modality, email, text, or SMS, etc., compliance is critical. Now, can you shed a little more light on the compliance and fraud prevention and the approach that Observe is taking in this very important aspect of the business?
Absolutely. I think this is top of mind for a lot of C-suites. Again, your agents are working from home and they are touching thousands of customers. So obviously one breach can be catastrophic. So at the start, it's all around the accuracy and being able to detect the conversation. So with our AI, we're able to transcribe 100% of the conversation at the highest accuracy, therefore spotting when the agent is not meeting the right scripts, when they are breaching protocol, or we're using the AI to spot trends when a potential fraud may occur. And with AI, it's actually pretty interesting. One of the challenges is trying to spot all of the anomalies. So when you have anomalies within a call, for example, following a certain script, it could still be a breach or fraud if the agent says a word or two completely differently. And so with AI, you can catch those anomalies, therefore spot, again, 100% of the conversations to ensure and protect the business.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Pete. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the technology, right? Can you talk a little bit about the platform architecture and more specifically, given the solution that you have, how did you build your automatic speech recognition engine? And what's really unique about what Observe.ai has built?
Yeah, the uniqueness really comes from a couple of different places. Number one is, so again, we're all used to home devices, and I'm sure Ashwar, you shout at your Cortana or your Alexa, and you're having conversations with that. But ultimately, that's a very different conversation than what agents and customers are having. Agents are dealing in busy contact centers or now remote with very poor Wi-Fi. Customers are calling in from their mobile devices with background noise and also in a busy coffee shop. So being able to use AI to focus on just that narrow lens of conversation is where we really focus our area of expertise. We're able to figure out all the nuances, the intent, the sentiment, the tonality, and therefore grab the highest level of accuracy. Now, in regards to the technology stack, obviously the key here is trying to be as agnostic as possible, but be able to work with, all the information coming from Microsoft Dynamics and Teams, being able to pull in all the call recordings and metadata coming from the major contact center platforms, and also with all the different chat platforms. And then using some of our secret sauce, in addition to the stuff that Microsoft is building, like cognitive services and voice recognition, we're then able to drive users down a very simple workflow. But ultimately, the value of this data is really we're unlocking this black hole of customer experience data. And all of that is then made available to Power BI or your data warehouse. So again, it's a very open system that takes disparate data sources, processes it through the best engine in the world that is a black hole for a lot of CX leaders, and lastly, making it available through either a UI workflow or available back to the systems that you're familiar with, whether it's Dynamics or Teams.
That is very correct. I want to pivot for a second and talk about a real contact center scenario, which is today, depending on the volume, roughly 2 to 3% or slightly more of the calls are actually analyzed. And these calls are analyzed by quality analysts who sit within these contact center spaces, right? Which really leaves this sort of the black hole that you call, which is 96, 97% of the calls. We're not getting that rich insight and data. Can you talk a little bit about how Observe comes into the picture with 100% call sentiment analysis and what businesses, especially enterprise customers, should expect working with Observe starting day one?
No, absolutely. I love that you brought that up, Ashwar. And for me, this is madness, right? Making critical, game-changing business decisions on 2 to 3% of your data. So imagine this, Ashwar. You have a bank account, and they only show you bank statements for 2 to 3% of your transactions, right? That is what we're missing, right? So what is happening is we're able to capture 100% of the conversations, and then we're able to make that objective. So now when you're analyzing the data, you're looking at the entire data set and be able to pivot to each geography and each region. And so by having this complete coverage, you're able to find out objectively where the problematic areas, where somebody's talking about your competitor, where somebody's talking about your product. Because if you're just analyzing 2 to 3%, chances are you're collecting that from customer surveys, which doesn't probably represent your entire customer base. Or if somebody's manually listening to calls, you already know how subjective that is.
Yep.
But also imagine when they're listening to calls, they may be picking random calls and an agent may just have a bad day, but that's not a representation of their entire month. So my point is 100% equals objectivity. And I'm sure, Azra, you would like to see your entire bank statement.
Absolutely. No, I think, Pete, that makes a lot of sense. And it's really then it boils down to that insight and the sentiment, right, that you drive. I want to talk given the audience is very technical, I want to talk about the customizations in the product itself. Can you share some light on the various customization, be it the call length, the hold time, the dead air, the various aspects of the call that your AI runs over and draws all these key insights to save customers all this time?
Yeah, absolutely. Sentiment is funny because just look at the US alone, and we're not talking about all the different variations of English across the world or Spanish, right? Just look at the US alone. Somebody from Seattle, Azra, where you're at, talks very differently than somebody from Texas and somebody from New York. So there's already tendencies and accents and slangs that are very different. So imagine if we just use the traditional keyword spotting and try to use that and understand what people are saying. But the truth is you have to understand how people are saying it, right? What are their intentions? What are the tonality changes that is leading to something being interpreted? And so with AI and ingesting all of this tonality, we're not just looking at the transcription, we're looking at also the tonality and then the intent. And that drives a higher degree of accuracy, but also captures sentiment differences. Is the customer happy? Is the customer upset? Is the customer sarcastic? That's all been made available because we're catching the tonality. Now, in regards to what we do with our AI to capture some other elements, because we're able to use AI to detect whether there is a dead air. So for example, even when there is a silence on the call, but there's background noise, the AI can understand the two customers and the agent talking, so that if there's background noise and it doesn't match your tone, it doesn't use that as a false positive. So all in all, the AI already comes out of the box ready to go with different language packs across the US, but then it can be tuned to each customer. So for example, and Azra, you know this, Microsoft has a lot of acronyms. Yep. Those acronyms are not in the English vocabulary. So we'll need to then teach the AI on those acronyms, but because we have a custom model that can be tuned to each customer, we can train it on the AI and the Microsoft isms of the specific environment. So it allows us to very much target the customer in the right way.
Absolutely. So really, at the end of the day, it just all boils down to that sentiment analysis, customization, and ensuring that customers and call centers and contact centers and quality analysts are all productive using Observe.ai's solution.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Because without the sentiment, as you know, and I'm a pretty animated guy, right? But without capturing the sentiment, how do you truly understand how your customers are feeling about you? Because feeling is sentiment, feeling is emotion. So if you truly want to understand how your customers are feeling, you better capture the tone changes and be able to capture their intent and what they're saying about each product.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Pete. Now I want to pivot slightly again and talk a little bit about compassion and empathy, right? Now, we all know technology is a fuel for infrastructure. However, something that's really important for a company, especially in the customer experience, customer engagement space, is compassion and empathy. Now, Observe.ai is growing exponentially. Can you talk a little bit about the empathetic approach that you are taking towards delivering these high quality customer experiences for the end customer?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is important for us. And I love that this is very aligned to Microsoft's AI humanized approach, which is ultimately, there's no purpose of creating an AI system unless we're improving people's lives and making their lives easier. Look, the contact center job, right, which may look like a blue collar job, actually has a huge impact to your business. I'll use this example. You know, Azra, we probably haven't flown for a while because of COVID, but the last time we flew with American Airlines, United, or Delta, our experience with that airline is actually the people that we dealt with, the flight attendants, the counter people, anybody that's helping us. And we associate that with the brand. So obviously, we need to be able to arm the agents who are ultimately the brand representative to all of the major brands that are Microsoft customers. But then if you really think about it, we need to be able to empower the agent. So for example, empowerment comes in different ways. To create empathy, right, you want to have the agents who are best trained on dealing with every single situation. Knowing what to say, when to say, will allow them to be more educated in situations where it can get a little hairy, right?
Yep.
But on the other end, you need to be able to find your best agents and find the best results and replicate them. So the agents who are actually most empathetic, you want to find out who they are objectively and find out what their traits are so that you're able to address and coach the other agents to mimic that behavior. So again, with all of that, that actually leads to a higher CSAT to the end customer because now empathy is there in every single conversation. So again, this is a AI data-driven model to ensure that the environment is fully loaded with empathy.
So really, Pete, what you're saying is you take your subset of agents or your top performers, understand various things, the traits, the soft skills that they have, and sort of help these agents then coach and guide other agents who are perhaps new to the business, new to the industry, et cetera, or who have been there for a while, but due to XYZ reasons, COVID being one of them and the impact it has had on everyone around the world, really helping them be better while leveraging the technology and solution that Observe.ai has built and put together. So that's really insightful. Now, working in your role, I know you work very closely with your product team as well, right? And you have insight into what's next, some of the exciting things that are coming down the pipeline, and the exciting innovations that are taking place. Can you give the audience a sneak preview or a sneak peek into what's next and where Observe.ai is heading for the later part of the year?
Yeah, absolutely, and we're excited to do this with the Microsoft engine behind our sales, right? Because it is really the partnership that's pushing us forward. But where we're headed is obviously with automation. How can we now drive best results? So what that means is now that we have automated some of the tedious tasks in the contact center, now where can we spot trends to say, hey, you know what, if COVID is happening in this area, what do I do, right? At this point, we can say that something is happening, that COVID is being mentioned in New Jersey or Florida. But with our AI, what's next is saying, you know what should my agents do to action that? What is the actual best action that will lead to a result, right? Some other things when it comes to automation is a lot of the actions, like, for example, one of the key pieces of coaching is be able to score all the calls, and that's a very manual process. And so now we can automate that whole thing so that your quality agents who are basically maintaining the best experience for the end customer are actually using those insights to coach the agents as opposed to just doing the manual scoring. So it's automating that entire experience. And I think the most exciting thing, what we're partnering with Microsoft in doing, is we're now tapping into some of the real-time streams that Microsoft is making available. And with that, we can now address situations on the fly. So what that means is if there is a compliance breach happening in a call, you can get a supervisor to jump in right away, or you can quickly go and address that situation. What that would mean is obviously keeping these sensitive situations from happening, but also something as simple as preventing a customer from churn. Or if there's such an ideal use case that the agent should be pivoting, putting a knowledge base in front of them so that they're able to address the customer in the right way. So it's really doing all these things in real time, which is the future.
That's really awesome. One of the things, Pete, you talked about briefly early on was this industry, right? Can you talk a little bit about the industries where you're seeing significant traction right now, and industries that you're targeting we sort of fall onto the in pretty much in line with the industries where Observe is growing rapidly?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to first state that it's interesting when coming into the contact center space, I didn't realize every single business in the world had a contact center, right? Even if you don't have end customers, you're dealing with suppliers or vendors. So everybody has a contact center. However, the value is really what you're doing with that to drive better customer experience. So who cares about that the most, right? Obviously, retail e-commerce, who are key on experience. They want to find out what customers are saying about the brand, why they're not buying, what is stopping them on the shopping cart to not buying the next product, right? They want to find out all of those things. Obviously, financial services and highly compliant customers, those are one big vertical, because you are, if privacy and compliance is big for you, you need to be able to maintain that on 100% of the calls. Because again, one bad experience, you'll have the government breathing down your back. However, financial services also cares a lot about experience, because now their end users are the most critical piece for them, right? And then I think the third piece is when it comes to, if you look at just general tech, most growth companies who are now thinking that, hey, you know what, my customer service agents not only support, but they can drive value, they can sell, they can upsell, they can prevent churn, right? These are more high-tech companies in the Silicon Valley, New York. They now want to use a product like ours to be able to arm their agents, to be able to drive value for their businesses. So sum it up, e-commerce, retail, financial services, and then tech companies.
Absolutely, that's really helpful. And I know we're closing in on time here as well. So final thoughts, can you share some exciting customer stories and some of the traction that you're seeing with the customers? It's sort of a pivot from the industry conversation, the industry point that you just made.
Yeah, you know, this is, again, this is near and dear to me because, you know, working in the Microsoft ecosystem, my whole career, I understand the value of customers, right? Really a customer-centric approach. And ultimately, nothing matters unless the customers are happy. And actually, we've seen some really impactful results during COVID that is near to dear to our hearts, right? So one of them is being able to spot fraud and waste, insurance fraud. So you can imagine, as people are working from home, and now you're trying to deal with people who are procuring insurance, whether it's on a mobile phone or on a computer, the impact of fraud and waste to the customer, right? The impact of when somebody, misguided at home doing something that is fraudulent, and the customer not being able to catch that. For one customer, we were able to catch about 13 fraudulent attempts in the first week. That allows them to save potentially tens of thousands of dollars just on that alone, right? And now they implemented a procedure, and if they didn't implement that, that's potentially millions of waste that would have been lost, right? But on the other end, really the impact has to do with, I think, now we're seeing that customer service agents are obviously a lot more educated and really want to empower themselves, and they're very proud of the brand they represent. So really what our product does is enable them to ultimately be the best brand representative, right? So there's an impact to retention, there's an impact to productivity, because they're able to drive things forward and be confident on the answers that they're giving. So again, I really love the impact that we have for customers and together that we have with Microsoft.
Thank you, Pete. And in closing, I just want to reiterate one important thing, that Observe solution analyzes voice calls, chats, emails, SMS, etc. I know we're at time here. In terms of next steps for the audience, please feel free to connect with Observe directly via their website, and we have the QR codes here for if you're interested in having a demo. We also have a joint case study with Observe.ai that you can find on our website. And then if you're interested, also we would highly recommend downloading the Agent Performance Handbook that Observe.ai team has put together. With that, I just want to say thank you so much, Pete, for joining us. This was very insightful, and we look forward to deepening our strategic partnership together. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ashwar.
Have a great Ignite, everyone. Thank you.